Recently, I made a couple little short horror films almost entirely by myself. And it kind of reminded me of the old days when I was fresh out of high school and I didn't have the resources or gear or crews that I often do now. And I was making little short sketches with a mini DV cam and a couple of friends. And I kind of realized I hadn't done something like this in almost 10 years, just going out and making a film entirely by myself. And I realized it's such a great exercise for any filmmaker, whether you're experienced or brand new, for a couple different reasons. It makes you wear all the hats. You get out of your comfort zone and maybe attempt cinematography or visual effects, and you get to learn a new skill. You might not necessarily be great at it, but that's fine because it lets you build skills that you may not have given yourself the opportunity to learn otherwise. And that will help you later when you're working with a crew. You might now speak a bit more of the language of, say, a visual effects artist. And decisions you might make on set might actually make the life of a visual effects artist easier because you have put yourself in their shoes and you know what they're going through. And if you can find ways to improve a workflow or make someone else's job a little bit easier, that might keep, say, a budget down later when you're working with a producer, which means they'll be very happy, and that might get you hired again. So by learning skills you might not necessarily do yourself for a client, knowing the bare bones and the basics of how to do them is an incredibly important skill because it'll let you speak the language of other people doing that job professionally, and that can only help you in such a collaborative medium that is filmmaking. We'll just pick up from halfway through. Okay. This time don't hit him in the head with it. We have one. That going?
That's on. How much contrast do you want?
The other thing is it forces you to think outside the box and get creative, because all that matters is what's in the finished frame. It doesn't matter if it was shot with a $200 DSLR or a $90,000 RE Alexa, or if it was lit with the proper cinematography light, or with a $15 paper lantern from IKEA. If it looks good and it sounds good, that's all that matters. So if you want the camera to move, usually you use a dolly, for example. But if you don't have access to one, then maybe you put the tripod on a towel and slowly drag it across a hardwood floor. The audience can't see behind the camera. They don't know whether or not it was on a proper dolly or on a towel. And if you've done a good job, if the film is good, if it looks good and it sounds good, they won't care and they won't think of it because they'll be concentrated on the story, which is the most important part. So I've read a few things online where people have said they're afraid to make a film because they don't want it to suck, or they went out and they shot a film and they're editing and they realize it sucks in editing. And that's okay. You're gonna make bad projects. You're gonna make films that suck.
To hell with it. 1,116. All in.
My lord,
Shut up!
This is not how the game is played.
I don't care how the game is played. This is it.
Everybody does. If you went back and watched some of my early films that I don't have on YouTube, you'd probably be like, oh, that's interesting. So what's your backup like? Thinking of doing anything else with your life instead?
Shut up!
And even if you get good and you make a film that is halfway decent, don't worry, someone will come along and tell you exactly why it actually sucks. But I think the most important reason why you should go out and make a film entirely by yourself is it allows you to make something that is just entirely you. There's no cinematographer telling you why a shot won't work. There's no producer or client giving you feedback notes or giving you story suggestions. There's no deadline you need to hit unless you give yourself one, which I kind of recommend. But if you break it, it's not a big deal. There's no money on the line. There's no client who won't hire you. You get to do something at your own pace, the way you want to do it, without anyone interrupting your creative vision. And there's something very liberating about that. And something that's very fun because we get wrapped up in client work and working on projects with collaborators. And then you've got all these voices, no matter what the project, trying to tell you what might be better and giving you suggestions. And sometimes that's great, but sometimes it's really nice to just make something for fun with nothing on the line but your own time. And even if it ends up being mediocre,
shut up!
You probably learned something by the time you wrap up that project. Making something that's driven entirely and creatively by you is a luxury that you don't often get in this industry. Taking the time to just make a project entirely by yourself is very liberating, very educational, and something that every creative and filmmaker should do at some point. Anyway, I hope this has been informative and maybe motivating to someone who might need to hear it. If you have made something, say by yourself or with one other person during the pandemic, or you're working on something now, whenever you finish it, feel free to comment it below. I'd love to take a look at what some other people are doing creatively out there right now. I'm also working on a few other projects, so stay tuned for that. The one thing is when you're making a film by yourself or with very limited resources, it tends to take a little while, so I'll get them out when I get them out because I have no client mandating a deadline. It's quite nice.